All right, welcome everybody to our week 4 live session. I can't believe that we are already in week 4 for DES 113 typography. I swear, somewhere between the beginning of week 3 and the end of week 3, it zooms by, and then we're another mod down. So I'm sure you guys feel the same way too. But we are definitely in week 4, our last week of this mod, which is mod 1. So our agenda for this evening, we're going to go over some common typography problems. We're going to take a look at the week 4 assignment. I'm definitely going to show you how to set it up, and if time allows, I am going to do a poster demo. And then for the week 4 assessment, you actually have a final quiz. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. And then I am going to do a fun little quiz tonight in the slides. So fun for people who are here and for those who may be watching on the YouTube video at home. All right, just a reminder that my telephone hours are Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Mountain Time. You can email me any time of the day. Just note that I am on Eastern Standard Time Zone, so just be aware of the time zone change if you are trying to reach me. And a reminder about our due dates. All of your work is due by Saturday at midnight. Remember that week 4 assignment cannot be turned in late. So make sure that when you are uploading those assignments this week, that you're giving yourself enough time. You know, the entire school is uploading at, between 11 and midnight. Not just the entire School of Graphic Arts, but literally all of Independence University is uploading on Saturday. So this can tend to bog the servers down a little bit. So just make sure that you're giving yourself enough time, because if the clock turns to midnight, the course will turn into a pumpkin and it will lock you out even if you were mid-upload. If that does happen to you by any chance, make sure you immediately email me and email me your file. If your file is too big to go through email, then you need to use either Dropbox or Google Drive or some way to get that file over to me. And it needs to be sent to me immediately, not an email saying, I got locked out, what do I do? Because I get up first thing Sunday morning and I grade, because our grades are due in by Monday. So just make sure that you are getting files over to me if you do run into a problem. If I don't see anything from you, I'm just going to assume that you did not do the work and I will submit the grades. Also, if you plan on redoing any of your assignments for a higher grade, those are due tomorrow at midnight, so please make sure that you're getting on that and getting those in. I will not grade any redos past Tuesday. If you have missing work and you currently have a 0 in the spot, those I will grade, because that is missing work, and you will have, one shot to get it in and get it done right. Also, we have a week 4 discussion this week. So make sure that you are going in, that you are doing the discussion. Also, if you have missed a discussion somewhere along the way during this mod, I am giving you a gimme, and you may submit it by Thursday at midnight of this week, and I will grade it. So if you missed a discussion this mod and it's really dragging your grade down, you may submit one missed discussion. I'm going to put that in here. You will still lose the 5 points for it being late, but if you want to get at least 55 points, make sure that you are submitting it and you're responding to 2 of your fellow students, and you've hit all of the prompts. If you did not miss a discussion, but you lost a lot of points on a discussion for missing a prompt, you can go in and edit your discussion and fix it. Just send me an email so I know you've done that, because I'm not sure if it will show me in the grade book. So it will be up to you to get in touch with me and let me know that you've done that. So you can do that on one discussion if you're not happy with your grade. So please, make the most of this, get those grades up going into Saturday. Again, we will have our last multi-session tomorrow from 4 to 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Those multi-sessions are open to students to come in with any assignment problems, questions, or if you need some one-on-one tutoring. This gives you ample time during the week to get those assignments done. And if you do need any outside help, the Student Success Center is open with tutoring available, and there's no appointment necessary. So this seems, as always, like a good segue to hop over into our course and take a look at the announcements. All right, so I did post a reminder about those redos last Friday, and again, let's finish strong. Please make sure you're getting any outstanding work. Watch the live sessions and visit the Student Success Center if you're running into any issues with your final projects. Email me early if you need help. I can't help you at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night. Also, do those daily checkpoints each day this week. Make sure you don't forget about those, and have fun with your designs. The reason why we got into graphic design is because at the end of the day, it's pretty cool. So have fun with it, and, really put your best foot forward. You could be going to school for something that you would have to sit and memorize paragraphs and paragraphs of text. Instead, you get to make cool projects. So really have fun with it, and it'll show in your work. Also, DJ has hours this week on Monday from 4 to 7 p.m., Thursday from 7 to 11 p.m., Friday from 4 to 11 p.m., and Saturday from 3 to 10 p.m. So definitely some great hours for week 4. So if you're running into any problems, please make sure you get in there and see DJ. She's definitely there to help. Also, I posted, and I'll show it to you right now, a little video to show you how to view the annotations and feedback in the grade book. I had made notes on a lot of people's PDFs, and I just wanted to make sure everybody could see how to access those notes. And I had posted this announcement earlier today, and I realized maybe a couple of hours later that I forgot to hit the publish button on YouTube. So if you didn't see the YouTube link, it is active now. So I do apologize for that. So I'll just play this for you guys. Morning, everyone. I wanted to just make a quick video to show you how you can see your feedback on your grades that I've left, the little notes that I've left on your PDFs. So if you go over into your grades area and scroll down, I'm going to use the week 1 assignment as an example. What you need to do is it'll show your grade. You can see the rubric. So you can see where you may have lost some points. And then if you click on View Feedback, this will show you that PDF where I have annotated the notes for you. So this will be a little bit helpful so you can preview, and you can see where each of the boxes, there's a little dotted line that shows where the note goes to and the different feedback. So hopefully this is helpful. All right. And what else? I had one other announcement, I believe. Oh, yes. All right, so I have some links here for some YouTube videos for going above and beyond the class, which if you don't have time right now or this week to watch them, they're good to, to just bookmark for future reference. So there's how to use envelope distort on type in Adobe Illustrator, warping text into custom shapes in Adobe Illustrator, how to change font typefaces, how to create custom type designs, how to design custom lettering in Illustrator. There's a whole bunch of them. So, you know, just something for you to bookmark going forward if you find yourself in another class trying to do one of these types of things and you're like, wait a minute, I know that there was a video somewhere. What I do is in my bookmarks, I actually have a graphic design area where I put all of my graphic design links, like design inspiration, fonts, stock art, tech stuff, stuff for fun, web stuff, and I organize everything that way. So I definitely suggest doing that, starting a folder and calling it graphic design and putting all of your little links, like, you know, helpful links or tutorials, things of that nature. It'll be a lot easier when you're going in trying to find those videos later on or those websites later on. And it's just good to have a reference right at your fingertips for when you're trying to do something, you know, a reference where you've gotten good advice from in the past, or you've seen good tutorials from in the past, you know, so that way you're not, you know, searching down the rabbit hole of Google trying to find something when you're up against a deadline. So that's one of my suggestions. All right, let's hop back over into the slideshow. So let's talk a little bit about grids. And the reason why we're going to talk about grids is it really goes back to our assignment for this week. We're going to be designing with a grid. So I just wanted to kind of go over grids a little bit and the reason why we use them. So design grids are not mathematical grids. They're definitely different. They have gutters and type fits perfectly against all of the edges. So you can see here's the grid. Here is the grid with a layout applied to it. So you would align your graphics to the column, the margin, and the page guides, and then you would align your text to the margin and the column guides. They act as a tool to divide images and words in a satisfying way. I have a little link here. So this is a little article on, you know, the designer's guide to grid theory. Grids establish a meter and a rhythm, which is why we use them, or why we want to use them. Because we want to tell our user how to, whoops, oh, I hate websites with ads. Don't you guys? I'm in a mess. No. Get out of here, Pet Fresh or Fresh Pet. Come, all right, there we go. We want to tell our user how to see across our page. We want to control the way their eye moves across our page. So that's why we use a grid. You know, the purpose of a grid in graphic design, at least, is to establish a set of guidelines for how elements should be positioned within a layout. Not only does an effective grid provide the rhythm for a design, but it also defines the meter. Grids define and reflect proportion. So grids work with the golden ratio, and this is the golden ratio. You probably have heard about this before. The whole concept of a definitive grid system is a relatively recent invention in the world of design. Grids have existed intuitively since the earliest days of man drawing and writing, but it's only recently that layout has been considered in a scholarly fashion. So the golden ratio, which is also known as the golden mean, determines the most pleasing set of proportions for an element and is simplified to the rule of thirds. When used in combination with a grid, these simple rules for size, position, and proportion can help ensure a layout feels coherent, but also aesthetically appealing. So if, you know, take some time to look up the golden ratio. It's really interesting. There's a 960 grid system on the web. So a 960 grid can be divided up in many ways, making it a flexible option. Grids provide a solid foundation. So you can see, you know, once you've mastered the basics, you can start to break yourself away from the grid. It's one of those things, once you know the rule, you can understand how to break the rule. So this is a really good read if you have time. So again, why use a grid? But also, what can't grids do? Because a grid's not going to do everything for you. You know, grids are a tool to create consistency and to design at a more advanced level, and it offers structure and place. So when you create within a grid, you are really taking your designs to another level. You look professional this way. And at the end of the day, we want to stand out against the crowd. Think of how many people are in our class alone. So that kind of gives you an idea of how many designers are out there, and it's a very competitive field. You need to be the master of this game, and you need to start designing at a more advanced level, and grids are going to help you achieve that. So there is a process of choosing grid structures. You know, you want to define your format, the size of your page. You want to define the type area. You want to choose a font, stick to one for everything. A type family is preferred. Test until you're happy with how easy it is to read. That is the main reason for your design, is to get that information out. If it's not easy to read, you've already failed. So you got to remember that. It may look cool to you, but if it's not readable, you've already failed at the main job. Redefine the type area. Create divisions, apply a grid. So here's designing the format. First, you define the format, which is the size of the page. So for our final project, it's actually an 11 by 17. It's not this is an older set of slides, so I do apologize, but we're doing an 11 by 17, but not a double page spread. So if you were doing a double page spread, what you would do is you would choose where your type area goes. The same will be said for your poster design. So we have right here a single column grid, a multi-column grid, a multi-column grid with a horizontal anchor right here. And you'll notice, see how this column breaks the grid? So we've got one column and then we span two columns. Very interesting. And then this is another grid system where we have a 4-column layout, and we're spanning 3 of those 4 columns, and then we break down with our other not as important information into 1 column below, and we use 1 column for our images. Or we can span 3 of the 4 columns with an image and then do a 2-column layout and then some 1-column layouts. So you can see a couple of different modular grids right here. And just look at how aesthetically pleasing it is. So for this assignment, you're going to be designing a typographical poster. The theme of the poster will be your choice of just one of the 19 rules of typography, which was covered in week 2 and week 3 course media. You will need to use a grid to lay out the structure and make wise design choices to have the piece be visually interesting and communicate effectively. You need to apply the principles and information from this week's course media along with what you have learned so far in this course. Remember, test your grid, test your design, check your gutters, check your leading, check your type size before you submit. The gutter on a double page spread is the space between each page's text and also the space between each column of text in a single page, but this is often referred to as the alley. So these are your gutters in between your columns. This would normally be your alley. And then redefine your type area. You know, ascenders, those are the top part of your font that go kind of above that line. Look at the top of the letters, especially L's, K's. the letter B. The ascenders are the strokes that reach up above the height of the letter X, which is your X height. And then look at your descenders, which go below the line. Those are your P's, your Q's, your G. These letters reach down beneath the base of the letter X. What this means is make sure the tops of your ascenders are not running into the bottoms of your descenders. Make sure you have enough space between your lines. This is one of the problems I always see is people don't look, above the X height and see like, oh, this part of the letter and this part of the letter, they're running, outside of the type area. So this text box is poorly made because it's too large for the bottom of the text. If we look at the letter P, we can see that the box reaches too far down. This text box is well made. Its ascenders reach the top of the text box and its descenders hit the bottom of the text box perfectly. So why does this matter? Well, if you have multiple text boxes in InDesign and you're trying to align them and stagger them correctly, if it's going to gauge the amount of space between each of the boxes based on the size of the box, not the lines inside of the box. So you want to make sure that you have your text area fits that text box if you're going to try and align things that way in InDesign. So now all that's left to do is apply the thing, and we're done. The thing being your, your words into your layout. And there is a small video that you can watch on grids. I'm not going to play it now, though. All right, so I'm going to go back into the course and we'll look at the everything that's due for week 4 inside of the course. So let's start at the discussion for this week and go over the different prompts. So we're going to talk about font usage and copyrights. All that fun legal jargon when you have to check a box that says, yes, I read this, but you've never ever read it. That's pretty much what we're discussing this week. So why is that, of all things, relevant to your career? And there's actually a really good reason. There are thousands of fonts available to designers in the field. To serve yourself and your clients better, it is really important to understand what you need to look for when you're purchasing and downloading new fonts. You also want to be sure that the copy and usage rights of the fonts. So that means, can I use this font in a logo? Am I allowed to use this font for a commercial purpose? Those are the things that you need to look at. Using a font outside of the licensing restrictions can get you and your client in legal trouble and impose copyright fines that can be very expensive. So you really don't want to find yourself in one of those predicaments. So start searching for fonts online and you'll get thousands of results. Some have to be purchased from established font foundries and software companies. Others are free for personal or commercial use, but all fonts are not created equal, nor does every situation call for a sophisticated font family. Before designing where to look for fonts, evaluate the project and consider some of the needs. Is it a project for school or your own practice rather than a professional project you are getting paid for? Is the design for a one-time standalone project, or is it the beginning of a series of work that will need to be expanded on in the future? How about the cost and quantity of the production? Is it an offer on a web banner that will only be posted for a couple of weeks, a packaging label that is going to be printed in 20,000 copies, or large costly wrap for a building? Are you creating a new brand identity? That would be a logo. Or is the project part of an already established brand? You will need to evaluate the needs and then compare the quality and usability to determine if the cost and quality of a finer font will be worth it, or if a cheaper or free version will suffice. And you'll probably run into a lot of situations where the cheaper or the free version will definitely suffice. But there are going to be times where if you have a very big client where you may have to purchase a font. I worked for a coupon company, and one of our customers was the UPS store. And the UPS store is extremely particular on what fonts may be used in their ads. And if you want to run one of their ads, you have to follow their specifications to the T. And what would end up happening is our sales reps would go out and they would talk to, Joe the UPS guy who owns just one small franchise of a UPS store on the corner somewhere, and he wants to run an ad for 13-cent black and white printouts and for shipping or for mailboxes at the UPS store. And he doesn't have a big budget. So what he's going to do is he is going to use one of the UPS store's custom templates, because it's free for him as a franchise to use, and he's going to run that coupon template and just input his name, his address into that template. Well, that's great. As our company could use those templates, we were allowed to, but we could only use certain fonts within those templates. And there came a point where we didn't have those fonts, but because it was a UPS store, and if we didn't do it to their specifications, they were not going to pay for Joe the UPS guy's ad, and that error would have been on us. And if they didn't pay for it, he would have said, hey, listen, that's the whole reason why I ran this ad, was because you guys said the UPS store would cover my costs. Well, now we would have to eat those costs. So we had to, make a decision as a company to download and purchase those fonts. And in the long run, it was cost effective to do that, because now we own the fonts and the usage of the fonts. So when other sales reps in other markets went out and they sold the UPS store, we already had the font. So it was worth it to do that. And we were doing runs of, 30,000, 40,000 coupons at a time for just one store. So you had to look at the cost benefit, where it was definitely worth it for us to purchase that font, knowing that we were going to get a lot more business, and it was worth the, $100 that we probably paid to download the correct version of that font. So that is a time when using a quality finer font was worth the cost. However, for Joe, the pet groomer who works across the street, who wanted a font that kind of looked like the font on his sign outside of his store, and we found a free version online, that sufficed. He was just, a small customer. He was only going to run one coupon, and we were probably never going to use that font again for another client. So it was definitely worth it to go with the cheaper free version in that instance. So those are kind of two examples from the real world when you might run into this. So fonts have copyright, licensing, and usage rights. A font is actually a computer file or program when it's used digitally that informs your printer on how to display a letter or character and how it's supposed to be shown. A typeface, on the other hand, is a set of letters, numbers, and other symbols whose forms are designed to be used to compose text or other combinations of characters. Generally, copyright law in the US does not protect typefaces. So those are the letters, numbers, and other symbols. But fonts, that digital program, may be protected as long as it qualifies as computer software or a program. So that means that the US you can copyright the ones and zeros of the programming of that font. So this means that the US copyright only protects the font software, not the artistic design of the typeface. So stop and think about that for a second. For example, a designer may customize a typeface to use it as a logo design. While the typeface itself is not subject to copyright protection, the logo design itself can be protected as an artistic piece. When you purchase a commercial font, you are purchasing a license to use the font software. Your rights and obligations are defined in the end user license agreement, that little checkbox that you probably checked off and said okay, but you didn't read. Those agreements will vary among fonts and among font makers, so read them very carefully to understand what you can and cannot do with the fonts you are licensing. The right to sublicense the font is governed by the EULA. If you purchase the font yourself, you cannot send the client the font unless the EULA specifically permits you to do so. So that means that if I purchased that font, or our company purchased that font to use for those UPS store ads, but Joe, the UPS store guy, wants to use that font and says, hey, well, can you just send me a copy of that font? I can't do that if my end user license agreement says that I can't share that font. He would need to purchase his own license of it. So that's what that means. So this can mean that if the client will need to use the font outside of your design, they would be required to purchase their own license to use it. If the client pays for the font, they own the usage rights and you will not retain those after the project is over. But you would be able to use that font because the client bought it for the specific purpose for you, the designer, to use it. So it's a little bit different there. But then you would need to trash it off of your machine when you were done. Most logo designers that are using their own font library avoid potential problems with font licensing by converting their logo type to outlines. So using Adobe Illustrator and turning that type to outlines. Now it's no longer a font, it's an image. And sending the client a vectorized outline of the logo, but not the font file. This also ensures that anyone who has sent the logo, excuse me, for reproduction would not have any problems with the usage rights. So that's why when you take logo classes or you do designs and you create logos, that's why it is always important to turn those fonts to outlines. Each font you download and install on your computer will include a file that will hold all of the EULA information and the usage rights for that font. These can vary greatly from font to font and are established by the designer of the font. You'll have to look up this file to know all the specific usage details for that specific font. So, whole lot of information on font law. And it's kind of confusing. And the thing is font law is actually different over in Europe. It's completely different. These are just the rules for the US. So here's our prompt. For this week's discussion, start with picturing the following scenario. You have been commissioned to create a poster for a music festival fundraiser for a community garden. Your client has purchased the font family ITC Nova Reese, and there's a link to the font from fonts.com, that they use on all of their branded material, but they are open for you to use an additional, more unique or decorative font that will work well with the font provided. However, the client does not have a budget to purchase another font. Look at the client's font and its copyright restrictions, then find a font not already on your system that you would want to use on the poster. Make sure that the font you choose works well with the font your client requires you to use. Once you have determined this font, take a screenshot of it and embed it in your initial post. Also include a link to the font, then addressing the following. And remember, this can't be a font that you already have on your machine. On the client's font, which is that Nova Reese, after reading the client's font copyright info, how would you acquire this font if you didn't already own it? Explain your reasoning for this approach. Things to consider: can he give it to you to use since it's for his project? Are there any circumstances where you wouldn't have to purchase it yourself? Would the conditions of the usage terms change if it was a pro bono project? If so, how? For the additional font that you choose for the poster, Remember, embed a screenshot and a link to the font that you chose, and you do not need to download this font. You don't need to purchase it. You can just take a picture, a screenshot of how that font looks. So keep that in mind when you're doing the second part. When looking for the additional font, what was your strategy of finding a font to adhere to your client's budget? What was your thought process? What did you look at on the client's font to come up with the best solution for the additional font you would use? Did you find any restrictions on usage on the free font sites you explored? If so, what were they? What would you do if none of the free fonts you looked at had the quality you were needing, but you found a font that you needed to purchase? Would your decision be different if it was a pro bono project? How and why? For your citation, you might use articles that discuss guidelines for font copyrights and when fonts can be redistributed to others to use. You can also find articles from experts that explain how certain copyrights can be used. Your initial and reply post should work to develop a group understanding of this topic, challenge each other, build on each other, always be respectful, but discuss this and figure it out together. So here's your requirements. You need to make sure that you're addressing all of the questions in the prompt. So each of the client font questions and each of the questions regarding you finding another font. Make sure that you address all of these. If you keep forgetting to address a question, what I would do is take all of the different questions, copy them and bring them into Microsoft Word, and then answer each one and then delete the question or bold your answer to stand out from the question. So that way you're sure that you've addressed everything. Also, make sure that you are doing research and that you are citing your sources in APA format, because you need to have one APA citation, and also you need to have 2 follow-up posts of 50 plus words responding to your fellow students. So make sure that you are doing that. And there are some samples that you can look at. So make sure that you don't forget to do your discussion this week. I know some of the courses don't have a week 4 discussion, and then some of them do. So, just remember that going into this week, that you have a week 4 discussion. All right. So next, let's take a look at our week 4 assignment, which is that typographic poster design. So because this is typographic, that means that you cannot use any images. All right, so I just want to make sure, because without fail, I will probably get somebody who put some images in. Let's really look over this and make sure that we understand all of the different aspects of our final assignment. Why it's relevant to our career, what the background is, what our prompt is, and we'll also look over the rubric. I'm just going to pause myself real quick just to blow my nose, and so that way it's not super loud on the recording. I can breathe. All right. So why is this relevant to our career? Well, there's going to be tons of times where you're probably going to have to design a poster, number one. But there are going to be times when you may find yourself unable to find imagery that fits the needs of your design project, or when you need a different approach than using images to clarify your text. This is when having some practice in creating interesting designs with type alone will give you an alternative in the ability to create some unique design work. So remember, communicate, don't decorate. There's a big difference between design and decoration. Design is a process that includes planning for a specific purpose. Designers focus on communication, human interaction, cultural influences, historical movements, and aesthetics. Decoration, on the other hand, is adorning an object with ornamental embellishments without any purpose other than the decoration itself. Decorators are only interested in dressing things up with no concern for functionality, clarity of communication, logic, or interactive processes. Almost always, the decorations will hinder, not help the communication. They become distracting objects that draw the attention away from the intended messages. A skilled designer knows how to add interest to the communication itself rather than adding unrelated elements to the design. For example, choosing an interesting but legible font with a personality that fits the message for a headline is communicating as a designer. Adding a stroke, a heavy drop shadow, and a gradient fill to the text in order to make it pop is decorating without considering the message. Remember, your text should be able to stand out on its own without any of those decorations. That's how you know the piece is well designed. Typography can help the communication through the designer's font choices, color applications, text arrangement, and positioning, and ability to achieve a good hierarchy. Finding support in the grid. Although the terms graphic design or grids weren't commonly used until the mid-20th century, their functions have been around for centuries before that. Commercial artists, printers, and scribes have always considered content, proportion, space, and form in their work. A grid is a skeletal structure of guides that melt away in the finished version of the design. It brings structure and order to a layout, advertisement, information piece, or website. The grid works by breaking the space into regular balanced units, different column options that establish a system for arranging content within that space. For a designer, grids are about having control, working efficiently, and being able to collaborate effectively with other designers. Following a set grid will also create consistency throughout several pages of a printed piece or website and help the audience follow along with the content. Remember, as the designer, you have the ability to make your users' eyes engage with your piece the way you want it to through your design. So, think about that when you are putting your pieces together this week. So here's our prompt. For this assignment, you will be designing a typographical poster. The theme of the poster will be your choice of one of the 19 rules of typography, which were covered in the week 2 and week 3 course media. So you'll need to go back into the course media and find those 19 rules. You will need to use a grid to lay out the structure and make wise design choices to have the piece be visually interesting and communicate effectively. Apply the principles and information from this week's course media along with what you have learned so far in this course. Be creative in your approach. The poster should be interesting and engaging and not simply a page layout. Use the grid as a guide, but allow yourself to break out of it as needed for interest. Be mindful of every element and its placement so that everything has a purpose in the design and is not there for decoration only. Observing the CRAP principles of design, contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity will help ensure that everything has an effective place in the composition. So the poster will need to include the rule and number listed, the paragraph of text covering the rule of typography that you have chosen. Do not alter the copy, so you can download the text document here. We'll take a look at that. Eventually, when it gets through adding all the fonts. Highlight the featured rule by incorporating a visual example of its function and maybe failure. Interesting. Observe any other applicable rule in the design as well. Graphic elements created only by type or simple shapes that create interest and emphasize the function of the rule. Type characters only, glyphs or simple shapes may be used. No images or illustrations may be used. A noticeable and functional grid to keep the design organized and cohesive. There are actually grid templates available below. Here's an InDesign template and an Illustrator template. Credit for your text source listed. Excerpt from 19 Rules of Typography from the book. So you'll need to add this credit to your piece. And then your specs are using Illustrator or InDesign. The size should be 11 by 17 tabloid. Color is allowed. Set it to CMYK. Save both a native file, so that means either your InDesign file or your Illustrator file, and a PDF version. And then you need to submit your PDF for grading with the correct naming convention. You will also need to make a JPEG of your poster and put it on your Behance portfolio site. and then email me and your FPA with the URL to the page as it is on your Behance portfolio site, and copy and paste the URL into the comments when submitting it as well. So you can find your FPA in the, oh, I can't get to it from here because I'm in student view, in the your graphic arts course page. You'll be able to find your FPA in there. So make sure that you're meeting all of the benchmarks. Make sure that you're reading over the rubric. So follow the instructions. The assignment meets the required file name convention. You know, your specifications are correct. This is worth 30 points. Your concept is correct. Creativity, worth 45 points. Utilize the principles of design for a well laid out composition. And then the Behance submission. So make sure you're hitting all of these pieces. If you need to, print out this page and make a little checkbox, or cross off the items when you're done, just to make sure you don't forget anything. I am big on checklists because I forget things. I mean, hey, I can sometimes be a scatterbrained designer. I live and die by my reminders app and timers. So, I make checkboxes all the time. All right, so let's go back over into the slideshow for a minute. So I already went over this. Remember, be creative, be creative. But I do want to go over those CRAFT principles of graphic design real quick. So C, contrast. If two elements are different, make those differences striking. So you can kind of see in the example here, there's a lot of contrast in this image. Repetition. Use repeated elements to direct, organize, and structure. So you can see in this example with the business cards that there is the repetition in the lines. And you can notice that there is the same exact space here in this corner as there is in this corner. And the lines are evenly spaced. Same with right here, same exact spacing. You know that that was definitely on purpose. Alignment. Line up elements to create visual structure. So remember, a place for everything, everything in its place, nothing out of place. You probably saw something like that when you were in kindergarten possibly, but it works great with alignment as well. Proximity. Clump together related elements so that their spatial relationships organize and emphasize. Keep like things together. All right, and here's a couple of tips and tricks. Learn from some of my experience. Fonts. Limit the number of fonts on your page. If you can, stay within one font family. Text on top of a high contrast background, difficult to read. I shouldn't see any green text over a red background. Remember, KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. It's one of those acronyms, but it's really true. I have to tell myself this all the time because you know what? Simple can be beautiful. Colors. Limit your colors. Better yet, pick a color scheme. Remember that high value colors are high contrast. So that means, 100% cyan, very high contrast, but it's also easy to kind of class that into being primary colors. Stand out, make your designs unique, distinct, easily recognizable. Think about ads or posters that you've seen for Nike, Apple, Volkswagen. They're very simple and very recognizable. That's definitely on purpose. And if you need to, look at examples of posters and see what works and why it works. Sit there and dissect it and try and figure out, what? This really works, but why does it work? That's one of the things that we don't really think about sometimes is that, something works, but we're not really sure why it is that it works. And if you start to actually break it apart, you can see like, oh, all right, I get why this works. It's because, you know, this layout adheres to this grid, and I can kind of see the grid now that I'm looking past what's on the page and I'm just looking at things as shapes. So here's some great typographical poster examples. Here's one, Rule 10. Use appropriate line lengths. And look at this. Reading overly short lines creates choppy eye movement. Taking, you know, why you want to do things a certain way and purposely making it wrong. Rule 16, emphasize elements within text with discretion and without disturbing the flow of reading. You can use italics, underline type, color type, different typefaces with adequate contrast. Small capitals, capitals, bold type. So almost every font on this page is Futura, except for right here where different typeface is a different font. Outline type, but only used for larger type. Never overdo it. Right here, definitely overdone. Here's another one. I think that this is a beautiful type-only poster. Beautiful color scheme, beautiful choice of fonts, beautiful layout. Another gorgeous, 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 gorgeous type-only poster. One font only. Bodoni. Look at how beautiful, no color even. And this is beautiful. The simplicity of it is what makes it beautiful. Let's this is a great one to deconstruct. As you can see, this is the entire alphabet, and it's creating its own organic shape, but there's still a grid here. There's still, definitely an underlying grid that things are lining up against and then breaking at certain points. But look at just even right here where the S and the T meet and this negative space that is created, and where the N and the U meet in this negative space that's created. That is beautiful. The same with the O, P, and Q right here. This is so well thought out and so gorgeous. We've got the special characters here, and then we have just right here the whole alphabet. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. This was designed in 1929. Another one, gorgeous. Type only. Look at just, this says typography. Even though the letters are cut, the letters have now become their own shapes. And then the A standing out as a different font is just beautiful with this sans serif type, or with the serif type. I believe that this is Helvetica right here. And this might be Garamond, if I'm correct. Again, another one, example, type only. All right, so before we hop over into InDesign, let's have a fun little quiz, just for fun. If you know the answers, you can type it in the chat or take a guess in the chat. And for those of you watching at home, I will pause momentarily for you to take a guess before I show. So let's try that again. Common typographical problems is the lines of text are too long. The maximum characters within a body of text should be blank to blank characters. A, 12 to 24, B, 35 to 65, or C, 65 to 75. And I'll give a couple of seconds for a guess. And the correct answer is C, 65 to 75. It's actually about 2 alphabets long is the correct length, or the maximum length, I should say. So B would actually be a really good length to keep it at. Can you identify what is wrong with the circled type below? A, the color is too bold. B, it's a script font used with all caps. Or C, there's a spelling error. And if you said B is a script font used with all caps, you are correct. Typographical no-no. What is the name of the classification of typefaces that looks like handwriting or calligraphy? A, serif, B, slab serif, C, display, or D, script? And if you said D, script, you are correct. These are typefaces that have the most diverse and prominent personalities. So we have A, serif, B, slab serif, C, display, or D, script. And if you said C, display, you are correct. Killing it over there in the chat. They can convey a sense of authority in the case of heavier versions like Rockwell, but they can also be quite friendly, as in the recent favorite, Archer. Are those two fonts A, serifs, B, slab serifs, C, display fonts, or D, script fonts? And if you said B, slab serifs, you are correct. And here's some typeface choices, classifications, and personalities. So again, we have those serif fonts, which are your Times, your Palatino, your Bookman, your Bembo, or your Garamond, like I thought it was on the other page. Your Rockwells and Couriers are slab serifs. Courier can also be considered a monotype font. And then you have your sans serifs, which are your Arials, your Futuras, your Helveticas, Avant-Garde, Gill Sans, and Myriad. Then you have your scripts, Zapfino, Rage, Bickham Script, and Monotype Corsiva, or your display fonts such as Broadway, Playbill, Harlow, and Curls. Some people might not think that Broadway is a display font, but too much of this font is just too much. All right, next we have the parts of a letter. So the anatomy of a letter. Let's see. Number 1, which is this part of the letter H right here. And don't feel bad if you don't remember what they are, because I can never remember either. I remember sender, and I remember descenders, and that's about it. And X height. That is the bracket, however. Number 1 was the bracket. Nicely done. Whoops. Number 2, which I gave it away. Number 2 is right here, this part of the A. N is the terminal, yes. Number 3 is this part of the O, the inside of the O, which is the bowl. And number 4 is this part of the Y going under the baseline. And descender. Well done. All right. What type of alignment is this image below demonstrating? And the clue is on the right-hand side. Is it A, left justified, B, justified, C, centered, or D, right justified? And the correct answer is B, justified. Left justified has that rag. So what type of an alignment is this image below demonstrating? A, left justified, B, justified, C, centered, or D, right justified? Otherwise known as left, justified, centered, or right. When they throw in right justified and left justified, it makes it a little bit difficult. But this is A, left justified. What is this image below demonstrating? A, line spacing, B, kerning, C, tracking, or D, justification? And the correct answer is A, line spacing. Then blank is adjusting the space only between characters. A, leading, B, tracking, or C, kerning? And C, kerning is correct. Blank is adjusting the space between letters in an entire group or paragraph of text. So we have A, leading, B, tracking, or C, kerning? And B, tracking is correct. Then we have the blank dash can be used in place of a colon, commas, and parentheses. The A, M dash, B, N dash, or C, hyphen. And A, M dash is correct. The blank dash usually replaces 2 between numbers, so from 9 to 5. A, M dash, B, N dash, or C, hyphen? And it is B, the N dash. And two words brought together as a compound may be written separately, written as one word, or connected by A, an M dash, B, an N dash, or C, a hyphen. And with only one choice left, C, hyphen. All right. And that was the end of our quiz. And the end of our slideshow. So let's hop over into InDesign, and I'm actually going to stop this recording and start up the next one. So that way, if people want to go back and just watch only the InDesign portion, they can. So hold on one second.